Year. They finally revealed to detectives the whereabouts of Glenn Tranter, a suspected paedophile who'd been on the run from the police for months. The officers in the studio that night had been hopeful that someone watching might know where he was, but they could never have anticipated just what would happen next.
After an exhaustive 8-month manhunt for a suspect who seemed to have disappeared completely, this is the story of how Crime Watch viewers helped detectives from Lancashire finally snare a dangerous sexual predator wanted for numerous offences against children. This is how you caught Glenn Tranter.
Well, it's a pretty routine investigation for us, really. Back in June 2009, we received some quite serious allegations against Glenn Tranter of a sexual nature, those offences committed against children.
Mr. Tranter?
It was time that Glenn Tranter was brought into custody for interview.
It was actually my first case as a detective. During the interview, he denied all the allegations that we put to him and didn't seem fazed by any of the questions that we asked him.
I've done nothing wrong whatsoever. I don't know why anyone would make these allegations against me.
During the interview, he was very calm, very relaxed, but at the same time was very defensive.
Mr. Tranter, before we terminate this interview, is there anything else that you would wish to add?
No. Can I go now?
The evidence at that precise moment in time was insufficient to charge him with any criminal offences, so we were forced to bail him whilst we built a case against him.
Knowing it was only a matter of time before detectives had enough evidence to charge him, Tranter wasn't about to hang around. Seizing his chance, he went on the run.
We had a tip-off that he had fled the area. We were really concerned about this because here is a man who poses a huge risk to the general public and to children, the most vulnerable people in our society. Given the seriousness of the allegations against him, we put into motion immediately efforts to try and locate him. We circulate him as wanted. He goes onto the police national computer. Wherever he is stopped and checked throughout the United Kingdom, it becomes known that he's wanted by the Lancashire Police.
We continued those investigations looking into his mobile phone usage, his bank accounts, worked with his insurance company regarding his car. But we just drew a blank on all of those inquiries.
Originally from West Yorkshire, Tranter had connections with Slough and the Thames Valley area, and it was there that police concentrated their efforts.
We contacted the local police in Thames Valley, who were able to tell us that during the summer of 2009 his car had activated a camera entering their area, but had never shown it to leave again.
We knew that historically he had connections in Slough. We suspected that he was working in the Slough area, perhaps under an alias.
But after months of extensive inquiries, detectives finally exhausted all their leads. Unable to trace Tranter and fearing he could offend again, they turned to Crime Watch.
Tranter was a strange individual who, if you ever met him, he would leave a lasting impression on you. His personality would be one that you wouldn't soon forget. And we felt that by putting him onto Crime Watch, anyone that had met him would recognise him again and would hopefully get in contact with us.
Hello and welcome to Crime Watch. We are live and surrounded by
DC Irving was in the studio in London. We were in contact with our colleagues in the Thames Valley Police District, especially Slough, and in the communications room in Burnley, we had a team of officers manning the telephones.
Let's join Rav with the first of this month's Most Wanted.
I was very nervous, and I was hoping more than anything else that someone would pick up the phone and tell us where he was.
Number 2 here is a nasty piece of work. He's Glenn Tranter, and he's wanted for 8 charges of sexual offences against children. He has links to Lancashire and the Thames Valley area.
Within minutes of his picture being shown on the programme, the phones were lighting up. There was plenty of calls coming in, directing us and telling us that people had seen him and they knew where he was.
Great response on the faces already, in particular number 2. This is Glenn Trenter. Check this, over 40 calls so far.
As we thought, Tranter had left a big impression on a lot of people. A lot of people recognised him from seeing him months before. It was absolutely fantastic response.
Michelle Mackenzie was one of the many Crime Watch viewers watching at home who instantly recognised Tranter's face.
I work in a bar not far from where I live, and this man came in one afternoon giving cards out to the customers and to the staff, doing taxi rides to the airport.
Would you mind handing out a few of these for me?
Oh, not at all.
Airport taxis.
Oh, lovely.
Glenn, that's me.
Nice to meet you.
Cheers, nice to meet you.
When I saw him on Crime Watch, I was absolutely shocked.
But Michelle hadn't met Tranter in a bar in Slough or the Thames Valley area, as detectives had thought. He was, in fact, in Spain.
The phone calls we'd been getting had been placing Glenn Tranter in Bellamedina in Spain. The phone calls were coming from expats who live in Spain, as well as holidaymakers that had been there and remembered him from the previous summer.
We were delighted. The team in the incident room and Darren down in the London studio were delighted that we'd had the response that we'd had.
Problem came in that he was abroad and he was in Spain, and we had no European arrest warrant in place, which we would have needed in order to get him into custody.
We had a good idea where Tranter was, but we still had to get him.
But later that same night, events would take an unexpected turn.
I've got a little girl myself, and my friends have all got children. And this man is walking around, and he could reoffend either here or go somewhere else. So I knew that something had to be done, and he had to be caught.
So, immediately after seeing Tranter on Crime Watch, Michelle took matters into her own hands.
I remembered that he brought the taxi cards into the bar. So I phoned and asked for him.
Is that Glenn? Can I have an airport pickup from Sizzle's bar, please? It's for Michelle.
I worked at Broadmoor, the hospital, so I knew that I would be able to handle, well, I hoped I would be able to handle the situation.
Taxi for Michelle.
Won't be a minute.
Okay. Having a good time, lad?
Yeah, it's a grand place. Yeah.
Are you ready? Good. Off we go.
Hey! What the hell are you doing? Get off me!
I know who you are.
What do you mean?
I know exactly what you've done, and you know exactly why I'm doing this. Somebody call the police.
Hello?
Sorry to wait you, sir, but Glenn Tranter's been arrested.
What?
Glenn Tranter's been arrested, sir.
Right, we need to get moving on this right now.
Well, it came as a complete surprise. It was a race against time, without a doubt. I knew that the Spanish authorities probably wouldn't be able to hold him for very long. I had to apply for a European arrest warrant. It normally does take up to 2 weeks, and it seemed like an impossible task to achieve that in time.
At the time, I was still in London. I needed to get back. The pressure was now on. We now had to do everything we possibly could, and as quickly as we possibly could, to get this warrant in place.
Glenn Tranter, date of birth 15/6/69, born in Keighley.
We had evidence to show that Glenn had committed sexual offences against children, and we knew if he was on the run, there's a chance they could do that to somebody else.
Remarkably, less than 24 hours after Crime Watch had aired, detectives managed to secure a European arrest warrant to detain Glenn Tranter. But it was too late. The police in Spain had already let him go.
I was absolutely gutted. My main concern was that we were back to square one and we would have to find him all over again because he had that opportunity to flee.
But by now, everyone in the area knew who he was and what he was accused of. This time, he knew the game was up. With nowhere left to run, he handed himself in. After spending months on the run, Glenn Tranter was finally flown back to the UK and straight into police custody. Pleading guilty to the charges against him, he was sentenced to 6 years in prison.
Glenn Tranter did think he was above the law. He had treated us with contempt. He had fled Lancashire, fled the country, and thought he was an untouchable.
I was just so glad that I was watching Crime Watch and I could actually do something about it. I think sometimes I didn't really think what I was actually doing. It just happened, and it happened the way it did.
Crime Watch played a massive role in locating Tranter. Without the phone calls that were coming in, I don't think I'd be sat here today knowing that he'd been convicted and was in prison.
Michelle, we salute you. Don't you love Crime Watch viewers? I mean, you literally could not make this up.
It was incredible. We often say one call can make all the difference. Here, the people that made the call then set a trap for Glenn Tranter and then actually caught him. It was astonishing. It has to be said the Spanish police who arrived at the bar originally didn't quite know what to make of it. They had people rushing up to them saying, we've caught this guy who's just been on Crime Watch, and they didn't really understand. But someone in the bar remembered he was recording the programme at home, so he rushed off, got the DVD, gave